Hi and welcome. This is my review of Ahsoka. I've seen the first 3 episodes with my children of Ahsoka. Now, my children are teenagers, young teenagers. And so I like to watch these shows with them and review them. Um, so this show is based, if you've never seen Star Wars Rebels, which is a cartoon, along with The Clone Wars, which is an earlier cartoon, you really probably will have no idea who any of the characters are in this series. You won't know who Ahsoka is. You will not know who any of the who Hera is, who is another character, or Ezra, or any of these people. And from watching the first 3 episodes, unfortunately, the show does not explain to the viewer who's never watched these cartoons who these people are. So I don't. I guess Disney specifically made this show for people who have watched these cartoons. Now, fortunately, I have seen these cartoons with my kids. If you haven't, then you're really not going to get anything out of the show. Because there is no character development that makes any sense for you to understand who these people are in the show. So I just thought I'd open with that. Ahsoka is played by Rosario Dawson, who is a very good actress. Unfortunately, in this show, I think this is due to the writers and the director, she comes off incredibly wooden. It's just bizarre. I think it is an attempt at them trying to act more mannish, which to me makes no sense, which is why we have several scenes of her in the first episode and all of the other episodes I've seen of her folding her arms and kind of trying to be brutish. It's I don't, a brooding female, very laconic, Spartan-like in her, nothing like that. She doesn't talk a lot, just kind of there, and it just seems wooden. And it's not only her that is acting this way. So I'm thinking that it's not the actors being bad actors. It is really the director that is doing this. So anyway, Ahsoka is, if you don't know, she is she's not a Jedi. Okay? She is a Padawan, and she is the Padawan of Anakin Skywalker. In other words, she's Darth Vader's apprentice. Unfortunately, she was never made a Jedi, a formal Jedi, and certainly not a Jedi Master. So she is still a Padawan. She literally walked away from the Jedi and told them that she is not a Jedi and doesn't want to be one. So that's sort of her background story. She fought in the Clone Wars alongside of Anakin Skywalker. So that's as much a history as I'm going to give you. There is a lot more things that happened, but it would take me an hour to explain it all, because there's literally hundreds of episodes of cartoons you had to watch. Anyway, there is also this character here who is Sabine. Now, she is from the cartoon Star Wars Rebels. She, in that show, is a teenager Mandalorian. So she is a Mandalorian. And for whatever reason, in this show, they tried to make her Ahsoka's Jedi apprentice. Okay. First off, the premise of that makes no sense, because Ahsoka is a Padawan and therefore cannot trained Jedi. And of course, the second reason is Ahsoka's not a Jedi. She walked away from the Jedi Order. Therefore, she is not a Jedi. In both cases, she cannot train a Jedi. Now, the third reason that this is stupid is that Sabine, or Sabine Wren, that being her name, doesn't have what it takes to be a Jedi, and from the Star Wars movies themselves, if you remember, Qui Gon played, if you remember him and Obi-Wan as his apprentice, one of the tests to even be trained as a Jedi is a measure of your midichlorians in your blood. Well, if you don't have those, you can't be a Jedi because, well, you don't have enough of the Force in you to control it, or enough of the midichlorians to control the Force. Now, Sabine doesn't have this, so once again, that would disqualify her for being trained as a Jedi. And of course, the third thing is in Ahsoka, she is older than a teenager now, and I would say she's like, I don't know, 22 or something like that, or in her 20s. And if you go back to the movies, once again, what does Yoda say to Luke Skywalker and Obi-Wan and everybody? He is too old. He cannot be trained. The boy is too old to be trained. And the same thing with Anakin Skywalker. He is too old. Right? And if you remember in the movies, Anakin Skywalker is only a little kid. And he's still too old. So how could she be trained? So all of this in this show goes against Star Wars' own traditions, if you will. I don't want to call them rules, but it's their own folklore in their own movies that this is going against. So once this hit me immediately, and I was like, well, this doesn't make any sense. And also, her acting is incredibly wooden. I mean, Ahsoka is wooden, but this particular actress is incredibly wooden. And like I said, I don't think it's her fault. I think it's the writing and the directing in the show. But she comes off as an extremely wooden character. Almost, I don't want to say it, almost like really bad acting. It's unfortunate because she's probably a good actress and she's being forced to act this way. Once again, there's a lot of staring in this show, and I mean staring for minutes. Folded arms, staring at each other, making odd looks that don't make any sense, which basically translates to boredom. I mean, there are whole scenes for like 3 minutes of people staring at each other, which really makes you scratch your head and wonder, like, why? There are whole scenes of just two people talking in a room for several minutes, and really saying nothing that like advances the plot of the story. So incredibly boring. This is something that not only affects this show Ahsoka, but I've seen it in other shows that Disney makes. The one that comes to mind to me was the Nick Fury show, where we had a lot of people talking, two people talking in a room, boring everyone to death. This show also suffers from that. To its credit, this show does have action scenes that are okay. They're pretty good. They're not horrible, but they're not fantastic. I honestly think that Ahsoka's uniform that she has on her head, it's supposed to be part of her body, right? Her tentacles, or whatever you want to call them, that are on her head. If you look closely in the show, it literally looks like she's wearing a hat. And the tentacles look fake, as they look like they're made of foam. And I don't know what they're made out of or how they do it. I'm not an expert in makeup. But it comes off when I watch the show. I have a 4K TV like everybody else in the world, and you can really see that she's wearing a hat. It doesn't look like it's part of her body. I just had to mention that. And I didn't think the special effects were all that fantastic in this show as well, which is really disappointing for Star Wars and for Disney, which is supposed to be the leader when it comes to special effects and things like that. It's looks like, I don't know if they spent their money wisely. Anyway, in the first episode, it is about the bad guys breaking a bad guy out of jail. So we have two, I want to call them Jedi because they are ex-Jedi. I'm not sure if they're Sith. They do not explain this in the show. Okay? Now, Sith usually come in twos, and so I would assume that these people are some type of Sith, or they work for the bad guys. Let's put it that way. They're bad guys. They actually work for the person they broke out of jail, who happens to be a witch. Now, I'm not sure about the witch thing. There is... So this is Star Wars, right? So there's witches in it. In the cartoon... I'm not going to go through this and explain all of this. But there are witches in the cartoon, okay? And they literally are the people that gave Maul and his... Yes, Maul has a brother, by the way. And his brother their, let's say, strength and sort of powers. This may make no sense to you at all because you haven't seen the cartoon, but once again, this is why this series, Ahsoka, the way it's set up, doesn't make any sense, because you have to have watched all these cartoons to understand what's going on. So they break out of jail this witch who is their boss, I suppose, who actually is working for somebody else who we assume is Grand Admiral Thrawn. Now, none of you have no idea who Grand Admiral Thrawn is unless you've watched these cartoons or read one of the old books from like the 1980s where Luke Skywalker fights Grand Admiral Thrawn. If you hadn't read those books, if you hadn't watched the cartoons, you have no idea what I'm talking about. So he's like another bad guy akin to the Emperor in some way. He's just a bad guy, okay? Let's leave it at that. So anyway, the witch is broken out of jail by the two, I assume, Sith Jedi, or whatever you want to call them, Sith Lords, Jedi, old Jedi, or something like that. The bad guy Jedi is Ray Stevenson, who unfortunately died. And so, you know, they do actually do a nice tribute at the end of the first episode for him, which I thought was good. This person you see on the screen here is General Hera. She is from the cartoon The Rebels. She's the good guy. And this is a robot, a Jedi robot, who I have to think back in my own memory to remember who this is. He is the trainer of all the little kid Padawan Jedis. That's who this robot is. He's played by David Tennant, whose voiceover is good, but he's a robot. So he, I guess, contains all this, what's left, I guess, of the sum total knowledge of Jedi training and Jedi philosophy, or whatever you want to call it. So that's basically the whole plot of the first episode. I mean, and one of the thing happens, Ahsoka finds in a witch temple a map. Now, of course, it's an electronic map that she has to decode or whatever. They have to decode it. Ahsoka doesn't know how to decode it, so she hands it over to Sabine, who is a Mandalorian. So I don't understand how that translates into she can decode something that's encrypted in some bizarre language. I would think that, you know, it being Star Wars and them having access to, I guess, quantum computers, or even more advanced computers than quantum computers, that, you know, I would think the computer could easily break the code. But no, she handed it off to Sabine. And Sabine, the bad guys are now also tracking this map. Or I'll just call it the MacGuffin, because that's really what it is in the plot. It's just a plot device to try to advance the plot and give you some sort of story. The problem with this whole show is there isn't much of a story. And especially when you're watching it and you hadn't watched any of the cartoons, you would really find this show extremely thin on story. Very thin on story. It almost comes off as a cartoon, this show, even though there's real people in the playing the characters. It's the writing is devoid of storytelling. It's extremely cartoonish and incredibly slow paced, but it just seems very cartoonish when you watch it, or at least that's the impression I get from it. I mean, you can tell me what you think of it. My kids feel the same way about it. And this isn't just me talking. Remember, I watch all these shows with my kids. And they tell me the same thing, that they thought the show was slow. They don't understand why the people are staring at each other for so long. I don't even understand that one. It's just like, what? I don't know if that's trying to add atmosphere or whatever. It doesn't seem to help the plot. These are the two Sith, or I don't know what you want to call them, ex-Jedi or whatever. Ray Stevenson is the master. The woman is his apprentice. This is the witch who they break out. This is, all right, you would never know who this is. This is Ezra. As an older person, if you watch the cartoons. So the other part of this show is that they are looking for Ezra. And so, yeah, whatever. Once again, if you didn't watch the cartoons, you have no idea what the show is about. You have no idea what's happening, and so on and so forth. In the second episode, Sabine gets stabbed with a lightsaber by the apprentice of the bad guy. And somehow she doesn't die. No one knows how this is possible. Because anytime anybody is stabbed by a lightsaber, they die. Well, now, there might be a reason for this. I can give you a very logical reason. The logical reason is that the lightsaber is pure plasma energy. And plasma energy is at, I don't know, several million degrees Fahrenheit. So if any of this is stabbed into your body, all of your organs from the heat would explode and you die. So it's the heat so intense that it literally would fry you. Actually, they don't actually show this would be the consequence in real life if you were stabbed with a lightsaber. Your entire body would literally explode from the heat because the heat's so intense and be burned to a crisp. That would be kind of too shocking to watch, I think, on the big screen or the little screen, so they don't do that. But anyway, she's stabbed right through the chest and whatever. Somehow she's alive. None of this makes any sense. It's illogical from a normal standpoint. Even in Star Wars, everybody that gets stabbed dies. Okay, even the Jedi, when they get stabbed, die. There's no way that they can save themselves from being stabbed by through the chest with a lightsaber. I mean, it's just stupid. But no, she's fully cured, and none of that makes any sense to me. Total illogic. Anyway, the third show, lot of they're training Sabine. We have Ahsoka trying to train Sabine and the robot trying to train her. But once again, I already explained how imbecilic all of that is, and even in the show, she can't do anything. She's supposed to be a Mandalorian, yet she cannot fight. I don't understand. And they're using kendo swords to train her, which, if you know anything about kendo, it's wooden swords. And it's a Japanese martial art. A lot of Japanese in this. I get feelings of Japanese rituals around armor, around swords, which doesn't make any sense to me. Okay, because these people are aliens. It's Star Wars. It's not like Japanese samurai warriors. That's not what the show is supposed to be about. But I get a lot of feeling of that in this show. Don't understand it at all. Okay, because that really doesn't happen in the cartoons. So I don't really even get it at all. And it doesn't happen in the movies either. So I don't understand the whole deal there. Why she is being trained with wooden swords, I have no idea. Because, as we know, even the smallest and youngest of Padawans are always carrying a lightsaber with them, a real one. Luke Skywalker was trained with a lightsaber, even though he didn't know how to use it. He's given his father's lightsaber. And everyone else who is trained. Obi-Wan, running around. He's only a teenager, running around with a lightsaber. Right? And we see all the Padawans in the temple, Yoda. This is just in the movies. Yoda's training young Padawans. They all have lightsabers. They're all little kids. So why would she have a wooden sword? None of that makes any sense. Total illogic. Unless, of course, Ahsoka doesn't know that. Because, once again, she's not a Jedi Master and doesn't know how to train Jedi. And herself isn't a Jedi, technically, so don't get it. It's just really weird. Don't understand it. The third episode, there is more action as far as space adventure, where they are fighting. They travel in their spaceship. Now, this is Ahsoka, Sabine, and the robot. Okay, Hera, who's over here, the general, is trying to get a fleet to go fly with them to go find Admiral Thrawn, Grand Admiral Thrawn. And this is because in the second episode, Hera visits a base, and they are have a hyperdrive that is Hera says is for a very large ship, like a Star Destroyer. And it turns out that hyperdrive is illegally being shipped somewhere that outside of the Republic. They don't even know who or where, and that all sorts of illegal old Empire activity is taking place at this base that she visits. And, there's one guy that shouts and tries to kill her, for the Empire, whatever. We find out the Republic has all these people left over from the Empire that work for them. And I guess their loyalty is to the Empire, not to the Republic, whatever. So that's what they find in the second episode. Hera finds this, along with she has Ahsoka tailing along with her. Now, so you might say to yourself, now how come all these things are happening? But it doesn't seem like Ahsoka is the main character. That's because Ahsoka in her own show doesn't seem to be the main character. The main character to me, after watching 3 episodes, is Sabine, not Ahsoka. So, she gets more screen time than Ahsoka does. And actually, she seems to get just as much airtime as Ahsoka as well. I don't understand why the show's called Ahsoka. It should be called something else. I don't know, Star Wars Rebels 2 or something. It's just weird. It's just bizarre the way the show is set up, character-wise stuff. Anyway, in the third episode, that they have this, after the boring, and I mean boring, training part, which is like a third of the show, we have this nice space battle that takes place where Ahsoka, the robot, and Sabine are on their ship, and they come out of hyperspace, and they find a ring. Okay, and they also find fighter jets. I don't want to say jets, I'm sorry. Fighter spaceship that these guys have, the apprentice, the bad guys has, and they attack Ahsoka, Sabine, and the robot ship. Okay, the problem with this whole scene, there's a lot of action going on here, but the problem with the scene is that whoever wrote it, and including the director, by the way, seems to only think in two-dimensional space. Unfortunately, in space, everything is fought on three-dimensional scale, right? You can be attacked from the top, you can be attacked from the bottom, you can be attacked from the front, and from the sides, and from the back. Kind of like the same way you would if you were in, let's say, a aircraft carrier on the ocean here on Earth, right? You can be attacked from below, from the sides, above, everywhere, right? Well, unfortunately, there's a lot of two-dimensional thinking that takes place in this battle where I guess the fighters can only attack from the rear, which makes no sense at all. And so we have Sabine, who is fighting in the tail gunner spot, which the ship is not even designed correctly for a tail gunner because it's actually restricted. Once again, this is two-dimensional thought. The engines of the ship are literally directly below the turret that the gun is set in the tail. So it cannot... It doesn't have the ability to go 180 degrees. It can only go 90 degrees, the gun. So this makes no sense in design of a ship. And it also makes no sense how she can shoot at and actually hit any of the enemy spacecraft. But anyway, it's really just stupid. It's a harken back to the original Star Wars movie where Luke and Han are on the guns and shooting, which actually is done in 3 dimensions, by the way, shooting and fighting the Empire's spacecraft. There also was another scene in this particular episode that was disturbing, where when Sabine is being trained with her wooden sticks, she has to put on a kendo helmet that makes her blind. Kind of like the same as when Luke, who is actually using a real lightsaber, puts on the blast shield and can't see. So whatever. I thought it was... Both of these things were in poor taste. The highlight of the 3rd episode, really, besides discovering the hyperdrive ring, is Ahsoka gets out of the ship in space in a spacesuit and is deflecting the shots from the Empire fighter craft, which is kind of stupid, okay? And I'll tell you exactly why it's stupid. Now, with a lightsaber, you could deflect a shot from a regular pistol or a gun, yes. But that's because the caliber of the round that's being fired is small. Cannons discharge a much bigger blast that the lightsaber by itself could not repel. So she would have been killed. She's literally standing on the ship while it's moving through space, which once again would probably be an impossibility. Well, I mean, maybe if the ship was floating in orbit, you could do this with magnetic boots, but not while the ship is fleeing Empire craft that are chasing it and shooting at it. That is just stupid. But either way, she's doing these flips and things that you could never do, whether you're a Jedi or not. It has nothing to do with physics. Okay? If a ship is moving and you jump off of it, when you try to land, the ship has already moved several, probably miles ahead of you because they're traveling so fast in space, so you have nothing to land on. I guess the people that wrote this never thought of this. So there's a lot of stuff that's pretty illogical that goes on here. If you're just a casual observer, you'll notice these things. So anyway, they're able to defeat and elude the spacecraft that are chasing them, and they hide on a planet's surface that is just below the ring, which is commanding the hyperdrive ring, and that's how the show ends. It was a very short episode, less than 30 minutes, I believe. The other episodes are more like an hour, close to an hour long. A lot of it boredom, just to be honest with you. So, in the end, what do I give this show? Out of my 5 scale, I would say that this show is a 2. Do I think it's better than She-Hulk? Maybe. I think it's on pretty much a little better than that, maybe. Is it better than Nick Fury? I would say it's about the same. Just giving you things to compare it to. Is it better than the Obi-Wan show they came out with? Yeah. Is it better than The Mandalorian first 2 and 3rd seasons? No. Not even close. Okay? So there you go. There's my scale. I sat through it so you didn't have to. If you enjoy these videos, please subscribe. Tell your friends about it and have them subscribe. Hit the like button. Until next time, bye-bye.